I'd like to call to order. Today is Tuesday, September 4th, Budget and Finance Committee. We're going to begin with resolutions. RS 2018-1328, sponsors Schulman and Sledge, issues of general obligation bonds of the metropolitan government in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $50 million. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Given the fact that we're actually going to be voting on this tonight as to whether or not we do a referendum and put it on the ballot in November, what is the necessity to go ahead and have this approved right now, today, with the council?
You want to take that, administration? We'll direct that to someone at the administration's table. They can articulate the timeline, or do you want to take that, Mr. Jameson?
I would simply note that the committee deferred this at the August 7th meeting. Consideration by this committee is not binding on what happens on the floor, but the committee, the council may want to determine what happens with respect to the referendum resolution before determining this. But as far as committee consideration, my only recommendation would be don't defer it, but make a recommendation.
Okay. Well, I mean, are we going to borrow? Well, so I guess my question is maybe a little more direct. We're going to borrow money tomorrow if this passes tonight, or if we vote and we put it out on the ballot for the people to vote on in November, does it basically put this in kind of a hold pattern, a limbo pattern?
No, these would be.
That's what concerns me.
The referendum resolution offered by Councilman Cooper, he does have a substitute that I don't want to speak for him, but I anticipate he will be offering that.
Right.
And that is intended to replace 1328. So you would be passing one or the other. If the full council adopted 1328 and then it adopted Councilman Cooper's referendum, that would replace.
Okay. Well, then I will wait. I just, you know, we do a really good job of putting the cart in front of the horse here, and I'm just trying to make sure we're staying on focus. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Glover. Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions for the administration. What is the debt service on the $50 million that we expect?
Councilman, the debt service, according to the schedule that I have, is about $3.5 million. Just for this, starting in FY22.
In FY22, and then that is 30 years or 20 years?
That is 20 years.
That is 20 years. And then much discussed here in the last months, particularly in June, Finance is preparing a very large bond offering. And can you give us some insight as to what that would be, since the commercial paper balance has been drawn down, when and how large that offering is expected to be?
So, Councilmember, that is anticipated in part of the debt metric schedule that we sent late last week. It's anticipated that would be $775 million issued in the fall. In this fall, between now and the end of the year? Yes, sir.
$775 million worth of general obligation bonds. And so this $50 million would be in addition to that when it became funded. Well, I thought the 775 was just drawing down the commercial paper balance, which has already been spent. So this has not been spent yet. So it is not part of the 775 million.
Can you use the microphone?
I'm sorry, there seemed to be, it is, but it isn't.
This initial resolution is going to be identified in the bond resolution as part of the 775.
Okay, for finance, again, we may be talking two different tracks. From your track, you've drawn down the commercial paper this amount is outstanding in commercial paper, you're going to issue a bond of $775 million to pay off the commercial paper, which has already been expended.
And there would be some additional bond proceeds over and above what's needed to pay off commercial paper. I think that's what Margaret would be referring to.
Oh, okay. So how much is going to pay off the commercial paper?
I think 650, 6 or 650. I think around 650.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you all for this. Another question, the 775 to be issued between the now and the end of the year would take our general obligation bonds outstanding as of then December 31 of this year to how much money?
Let me look a number up and I'll.
Mike, we can wait. And then also, I know before the estimate was for revenue bonds, while you're looking this up, revenue bonds outstanding with the $225 million for the soccer stadium, that would bring our estimated balance to be about $2 billion, right? I just want to confirm that also.
Okay, in the, I'm looking at the May Treasurer's report.
Thank you.
And the principal outstanding at that point with the bonded debt was 2.5 million. I mean, 2.5 billion, I'm sorry. And of course, we've made some principal payments since then. I don't have the current number in front of me,
Okay.
but to give you some context.
Well, if you would, by the council meeting tonight, that would be great.
Okay.
And then historically, it has been thought that it would bring our revenue bonding up to about $2 billion, if you would also confirm that. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. Councilman Sledge, are you seeking recognition?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, since I was the sponsor, just want to speak to the resolution, to what it paid for. So I think as most folks know, as we've been going through this conversation, this $50 million is split into basically two chunks, 25 and 25. Questions I've gotten from members, other folks, is basically what does this pay for? Simple answer is the 25 that goes to the fairgrounds goes to fairgrounds improvements. That includes the new buildings that we're talking about, in addition to the $12 million that we had already previously allocated in previous fiscal years. Plus that's supporting parking and the utilities there. And then it also goes to utilities, streets, and infrastructure on the property. One thing in particular I've been asked about was regarding straightening Wedgwood. And that's part of this, where it straightens Wedgwood to intersect with Craighead. I think that included a bridge. So that's the importance of this resolution. The importance of kind of doing it tonight, I think, to speak to another member's question, was because the timing is working out where we will have the state fair, and then afterward, we'll have the All-American 400 the 1st of October, and then we got to get moving. And you'll see amendments tonight on other pieces of the legislation to make sure that nothing is demoed that's being currently used or affecting operations of the current uses at the fairgrounds. But the timing is such where this is a critical piece of making sure that everything's able to keep moving. So I appreciate the time, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd push the button because, all right, so just very quickly, off of the additional, actually, I've got two questions here. Off the additional general obligation bonds we're going to do, I know we're talking about $3.5 million that you said on the $50 million, but the $12 million, I had added that into it as well when I asked the question, and I think that total was $4.6 million. And I think when we originally were talking, and Councilman Cooper, I don't want to assume anything here, but I believe the original was we're going to move about $700 million from commercial paper, and now this has been added in all told. So what does this do to our debt service? And is it 2022 before we start having to pay this $775 million back?
Councilman, they're getting it.
Okay.
Sorry, Councilman Glover.
Chris Harmon with
So
Finance.
I was, in answering the $3.5 million, that is just the $50 million?
Just the 50, right.
Yes, sir.
But I'd asked the 12 plus the 50, and that was the 4.6 million.
And when we prepared that, that was prepared as a generic $62 million schedule. It wasn't sort of done in the way that this schedule was done. It was a generic, because the question to us was for a $62 million bond issue.
Right, I'm the one who wrote it, yeah, so I wanted to know, and I think it's important to realize that when we voted on the 12 million for fairgrounds improvements, we didn't realize any of that money was going to be spent on, quote, a soccer stadium or whatnot. So I think we get a little confused every once in a while. The next question I have is, if we do this, and now that it's been brought up with regards to the building would not be demoed, and I realize we're going to get into that a little bit later, and the building that we're talking about, replacing all the stuff on the hill that's supposedly bad real estate, that's going to be moved down into what I've been reading is floodplain area. Is there anybody here from water that can help me understand how much study's been done on what this money's actually going to pay for, and how do we stay out of a flood zone with these literally millions of dollars we're talking about?
Councilman, I believe I see Tom. I do have my contacts in, so I can see you. We have Tom Palco.
Okay.
If you can come up to the lectern.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so Tom Palco, Metro Water Services. So essentially, the floodplain that we have through the fairgrounds has a very detailed study that goes through it. So you have the creek itself, you have a floodway, and the floodway is kind of defined as the area that the creek needs to convey the water downstream. And then beyond that floodway, we have 75 feet on the other side of it. That's a buffer area. All that area has to remain as it is, undisturbed. Actually, we were going to do some things to enhance that on the park that's going on right now, where the little soccer fields are being built. So the area that is the entirety of the floodplain cannot be disturbed. That area that's the floodway and the area adjacent to the floodway, those buffer areas, that area will not be disturbed. It has to remain as part of the ability of the property to convey water. They can manipulate the areas outside that floodplain, so only about half of the floodplain that's down in that area will be manipulated, so to speak.
By manipulated, do we mean that it could get flooded?
Essentially what you do is, if the piece of property can hold a certain amount of flood water right now because of the way the property is configured. So what they do in cases like this is that the engineers will do a study, and they'll show that they can move some dirt from one area to another area to maintain the ability of that property to hold the same amount of flood water. It's just that they kind of move it around a little bit. So at the end of the day, whenever we approve these plans, there will be no reduced ability for the property to store the same amount of flood water was there before the project went into effect. So essentially, there's no change. There's the way the regs are is that there's no change in the amount of water that can be stored on that property. So we don't lose floodplain storage through the project.
Okay, well, I'm certainly not an engineer or anything, but I'm just trying to understand it, because I read an email that came across 1 year ago tomorrow from the executive director over at the fairgrounds, and apparently there was a flooding issue last year on the potential property here, and lost fencing, asphalt, and sinkholes and other major washouts, trees down, have significant debris along in Browns Creek, et cetera. Are we getting in that arena at all?
Well, the work that's being done out there right now for the park area that's being built, part of that project is taking out a lot of that fencing and taking out a lot of those paved areas and putting back natural vegetation along the stream to enhance the stream. The fencing in there is a real problem, because when you ever have a flood, all the debris that's floating down the river gets hung up in those fences, and you get sudden, you get back basically building a dam. So part of the project that's currently going on right now is taking out a lot of that fencing, so we don't have that problem with debris being gathered.
Okay, well, I'm about as confused as I was when I began asking the questions. So it sounds like we probably have some water issues. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Palco, just for my understanding, I'm not an engineer either. When we say undisturbed, does that include we can't park in those areas as well, or we can?
So there's the areas that are currently being parked on could still be, it depends what's in there. So, yeah, if there's areas that are being parked on right now, I'd have to look and see what the general plan is for it. But essentially, you don't want to be parking in an area where there's going to be high velocity water, because whatever you park down there is going to kind of get moved. So the plan that we've seen preliminary at this point is showing that the areas that are going to be used for parking are going to be in that reclaimed area, and they're not going to be left down there by the creek just to flood. That's going to be provided for in the reclaimed area of the floodplain.
Thank you so much. I'm unable to see if there was any other council members in the queue. Council Lady Allen, I believe I saw you were seeking recognition from Councilman O'Connell's desk. So if you can go ahead and yeah. You're just gonna have to, we're experiencing technical difficulties. That's that budget. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. Can you speak? Can you stand and speak loudly just for the viewing audience? Fiscal year 2022. Did you hear the question, Chris? She was relating to the debt service. She said she heard fiscal year 2019. I thought I heard a different fiscal year. Oh, the more to that. So she's referencing the table.
So to clarify, if we're talking about the 775, that's reflected in debt service in 2019. The 50 million that's at issue here with the resolution is reflected in debt service with an interest-only payment in 2021 and a $3.5 million debt service payment in 2022.
Thank you, Council Lady. Was there any other council members seeking recognition? Councilman Cooper. You're gonna have to speak loud, the mics aren't working.
Thank you, Chairman. Another question, which is really on the capital spending plan, and is there expected to be one? What choices are you making in that capital spending plan because of the 50 million being spent?
So for committee members, the question that Councilman at Large Cooper is asking regarding a capital spending plan, when one will be brought forward, and as it relates to us voting on the 50 million, the impact of 50 million on the capital spending.
So, Councilman, I do not know what kind of time frame a capital spending plan would be on, and I don't know how much or how little a potential capital spending plan would be this year, if there was one at all.
Well, it would seem to most people that you'd make that decision. And you, since I believe in May and June, it was contemplated we'd have a capital spending plan in September, if there was one at all. It is now September. Should this $50 million not fundamentally be evaluated as part of the overall city's general obligation bond funding, so that people can understand that there are always trade-offs? You know, that this 50 million is over here, but, you know, we are not able to do the $425 million that we did for a couple of years in a capital spending plan. Last year, we were only able to have 2 capital spending plans. I mean, this is September when we expected to have a capital spending plan. How do we evaluate this separately from the overall city's needs?
So again, Councilman, I have not seen a capital spending plan, so I assume that would be taken into consideration when one is put forward, if one is put forward.
Well, so I'm asking. You know, it's September. I would imagine you'd be pretty close to preparing it if you were going to be having one in this year. Because it would be somewhat tough on the council all of a sudden to be given a capital spending plan having already appropriated this separately. So again, with all due respect, I'm certainly going to vote no because I think our process requires these kind of cumulative general obligation capital spending plans measured for its worthiness by the entire community. And if you're doing one GO project at a time, surely we will run into trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? No. Okay, we're going to need a show of hands. All in favor? Opposed? 8-2. Resolution will be recommended. Now we're on RS 2018-1373, sponsors Cooper and Vercher, calls a countywide referendum election regarding the issuance of bonds to be secured by the revenues of the metropolitan government for the construction of a new Major League Soccer stadium at Fairgrounds, Nashville, and appropriates an amount not to exceed $50,000 to provide funds for the referendum. Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move the substitute, and for purposes of this, how about substitute B and then a discussion?
Substitute B. It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Now we're on the resolution as substituted.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Again, I would want to express my appreciation that B, I believe, or the substitute language, you see three versions of this in your packet, A, B, and C. B, I believe, is the best. But in all cases, the language is identical. The only changes are capitalization, and in one case, you have a caption in C. And so the language here, I believe, and correct me, Mr. Jameson, has been approved by Metro's bond counsel as to the language, as to the words.
I don't want to speak for Ms. Darby, but she's here for us. I think she will acknowledge that it meets with her approval.
Great, and it does. Okay, so what you have here is language that meets the legal department and the bond counsel's approval. It's pretty dense legal wordage, and I'm afraid that we'll all be blamed a little bit for giving the voter something pretty difficult to read when they get into the voting booth, but this is certainly approved language. Also, we have this opportunity from the charter to include a referendum on general obligation bonds. I actually think it's sort of our duty on the ballot, and we have in November a ballot happening, which this council has already put, I believe there will be 6, probably, well, through this council and through petition, 6 separate questions. So this is inexpensively an additional question for the voter in November. And also I want to point out that in Miami over the weekend, they just passed a referendum on their soccer deal, and the team thanked the council for putting it on as a referendum, that this is both good process, helps build the team, and unites the community. And I'm afraid that uniting the community has to be a worthy goal here too with this referendum. So with that, again, I move for adoption. It's amazing that we're not taking advantage of this tool for us to spend general obligation money in a bond on this project. There's more to the project than just this money, but this money is something that we are actively not doing for something else in the county, and so getting the voters' approval to do that It's not a revenue bond, it's a general obligation bond. That money could be spent for schools, a lot of other things, and so having the voters' approval, I think, is a great, great, great thing.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. We have a couple of council members seeking recognition for discussion. Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I think, Councilman Cooper, thank you, and thank you, Council Lady Vercher, for introducing this, because I do believe it is the right thing to do. Back in 2013, when I sat in this chamber, our then legal counsel told us that anything this massive would have to basically come back before the voters. I think that's right. But what I do know is in 2011, they told us, leave it alone. We've decided that we're not going to leave it alone. We're going to go ahead and keep messing with it. And so now we have the opportunity to let the voters tell us again that they're okay with us messing with it, or they're not okay with it. But the same people we asked to go out and vote to put us in our seats here are the same ones I believe should have the opportunity to be able to say, yeah, I'm willing to pick up another 3.5 or another $4.6 million and et cetera, in debt service over the next 20 years. I'm fine with that. And if they're not okay with it, I think they need to have the opportunity to tell us and share what their views are. And so with that, I mean, I'm going to be supporting this. I hope we all will, because I do believe, and I've seen the letters and everything else that said, you know, this is our job to do this. Well, in 2011, the voters voted. I think they need to have the same courtesy shown to them today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Pulley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am not in support of this resolution, and I'll tell you why. I believe, in speaking to our duty, it is our duty to take a look at this stuff, and our duty to study this stuff at the length at which we and the extremes that we have gone to study these items, look them over. And one can't, you can't really rely on one without the other. We're talking about general obligation bonds here, but that's a part of the bigger overall picture of how it fits into this entire equation of the soccer stadium, the land deal, the fairgrounds. And to put that in the lap of the voters, I think, is just flat out unfair. I mean, some of the emails, just look at the things that we're receiving from the voters. We don't even know what the 2011 referendum said. It says here very clearly that this shall include, but is not limited to, the state fair, expo, summer events, flea markets, and auto racing. And I'm hearing from people all the time that says I voted against anything going on there whatsoever except the fairgrounds. And that's not what's in the 2011 referendum. So, yeah, I think it's unfair to put this on the shoulders of the voters, because my constituents are telling me I don't know what's in this thing. I expect you to study that and you to weigh in on it. And quite frankly, I think it's our duty to look at this and look at it in its entirety. And I you know, work as we know it would come to a halt if everyone in Nashville were to study this and put the time and energy into that the council members have to do their job and vet all these things. So for those reasons, I will be voting against this referendum.
Thank you, Councilman Pulley. Council Lady Allen. You're at Freddie.
There we go. Thank you. I just want to echo what Councilmember Pulley said. I mean, I feel like we as a council vote $30 million on sidewalks and other large amounts on a routine basis because we are steeped in this. We spend all our time thinking about it and studying. This one is remarkably complicated. I have heard from constituents who said, I elected you to study this. I don't want to vote in a referendum. I know that's not what everyone is saying, but there are people who, that's why they pay us the big bucks to do our homework and look at all the parts and pieces of this. And this one's got more parts and pieces than almost anything that we've considered. I appreciate the goal of unifying people, and I think we can do that without putting another thing on the ballot that we are appropriating money that we don't know where we're getting it from. So I'm also going to vote against this.
Thank you, Council Lady. Vice Chair Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I appreciate all the work that has been put into looking at this the different substitutes. But I have a question. This is either for Mr. Jameson or Mr. Cooper. The substitute resolution that's before us calls for a referendum. Yet, we have on third reading, obviously, the bills that would put forth and make the soccer agreement and the soccer stadium. How do they all play together? So, I mean, because by the end of tonight, we may have approved the soccer deal. So what happens if we approve it, and I guess if we approved a referendum, the deal would already be done, and then what would happen? How does it all work together, or does it work together?
So hypothetically, assuming everything passed, what would happen? So if this substitute referendum were to be adopted, that would replace the GO bond resolution that you just considered previously. That would be the language for the actual bond issuance as well as what's on the ballot. With respect to the three large ordinances that follow, this passage of this would not mandatorily defer those. The council could approve those. It would not be binding. The risk, however, would essentially be on the team. If they proceed with development and then in November there's essentially a no vote, that's binding. And anything they did in the interim period would essentially be at their own risk. My assumption from a practical perspective would be that they would refrain, but not as a matter of legal binding.
Okay, so one would replace the other, at least on terms of the bond. So it's really kind of it's an or. We either pass one set or we pass the referendum. I mean, they don't work together.
On the GO bond only,
right.
correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very quickly, so I would ask members to vote against this for a couple of quick reasons. One, I've already explained about the timeline regarding construction. This would essentially mean, take the 25 out from the stadium. The 25 that would be issued for the fairgrounds improvements would not be available for potentially 2 months, if not longer, meaning that it would set construction schedules back for new facilities for the fairgrounds, putting it into November and basically putting you into the winter on that construction. The other part of it is we have already issued $18 million in improvements for bond fund through general obligation bonds for the fairgrounds. So the question I would ask is, why does this money for the fairgrounds get pulled out, whereas the other ones we didn't feel so strongly about putting to a referendum? And then finally, I would just note over the last 10 years, we've done capital spending plans throughout, and they are primarily, if almost not exclusively, general obligation bonds. And for some reason, we didn't feel the need to put capital spending plans to a referendum as well. I think there's a pretty obvious reason why this is being offered, and ask the committee to recommend disapproval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Sledge. Councilman Roden.
I think this is a question for Mike. Mr. Jameson, on the referendum in 2011, we always talk about what it says we can't do. What does it say at the end about the council and voting?
It requires a 27-vote threshold or a charter amendment before approval of any demolition of the premises.
So when we voted in 2011, we took into consideration that in the future that a council vote would be 27 votes. Is that correct?
Correct.
So they were looking into the future and they said council needs to vote on this and have a supermajority. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Roden. Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, our chairman. In response to Councilman Schulman's question, I think this might be an interesting kind of colloquy with finance, Kim. So what is our outstanding commercial paper available balance?
In terms of how much commercial paper has been issued, well, our total is 700. The program is 700 million.
Yes.
Okay.
And do we have any availability in that?
We have some availability.
Some availability, but that's pretty heavily committed to many other projects that are being funded.
A lot of it has been spent at this point.
Committed.
Yeah.
All right. So for Councilman Schulman, the question is, we really don't have this money until we get to that big $775 million bond offering, which is not happening imminently. It is simply going to happen before the end of the year. So we really don't have any money to spend on this because of our committed commercial paper balance, right? That we have spent that balance out. And again, at some point before tonight, I would love to get what our availability is.
And I didn't, if I misled you, I apologize. We haven't spent the whole 700 million. What I'm saying is the program is 700 million, and we've still got availability to spend out of the 700 million.
Including $50,000?
50 million.
Teasing.
I'd have to double check on that.
Okay.
But Councilman, I did get the answer to your other question.
Okay.
In terms of the outstanding GO bonds, the principal balance at the end of June is $2.5 billion.
Okay.
And all of the revenue bonds outstanding for Sports Authority, Water, and Convention Center Authority is $1.6 billion.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So my point, actually, Councilman Schulman, is that in reality, you do have to have a big bond funding before you're really going to spend big dollars out there. That's coming up. So you're really not going to have any delay in this particular project with that funding. And then, Madam Chairman, I want to say it's clear why this is offered. Yes, this $50 million piece is only a piece, but fundamentally it will represent for the voters their approval into something that is much more like a $300 million investment by the citizens in this project. The $225 million worth of revenue bonds, the $20 million of appraised property, depending on whether your view of that it's high or low, the $50 million on this, and then depending on your estimates, the previous $12 million that has been committed on that is really $300 million. Almost everybody would say, golly, that is something that should be considered by the voters due to successful stair-stepping of the process here. This is what is available to bring the public's opinion on in, and that's very valuable. And I would urge people not to dismiss the public's opinion. In Miami, this is viewed as a good thing, and I think it should be viewed as a good thing here in Nashville.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're going to need show of hands. All in favor?
1, 2, 3,
We're voting on the substitute for the referendum.
3, 4. All right, I got 4. You're 4. Okay. So that's 5, 4,
Opposed?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5 to 7. Fails.
5 to 7. Committee will be recommending disapproval. Well, RS 2018-1377, sponsor Virture, authorizes the Metro Department of Law to compromise and settle the claims of Amy Elizabeth Guy against Janie Romans and the Metro government in the amount of $115,000. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilman Pulley.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. Can I get the sheriff up to answer a couple of questions?
We do have the sheriff in the building. Congratulations, Sheriff.
Thank you very much.
Yes, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. Bad night to be here, but
maybe under different circumstances. It looks like we have a lawsuit settlement based on an incident that occurred at the jail. Before I ask any questions, you want to just go ahead and explain to us what happened?
yeah, this event occurred about 5 years ago, and basically we use what you commonly refer to as pepper spray inside the institutions. There was a use of force involved here where there was a female officer, Miss Romans, and Miss Guy was the inmate. It's important to note that where this occurred is what we call classification. You do not know who you have yet. A lot of charges, a lot of things pending, it's very new in the process. Therefore, we treat them typically as a high-risk offender until we get everything, if you will, diagnosed. And so in this situation, there was as we call it, count time, which means everybody is to be locked down during this period of time. Inmate Guy walked out, came out of her cell, and was refusing to go back in. This is on video. It's not on audio. But the instruction was to return to your cell. There was some exchange there. Clearly, she did not go back to the cell. Officer Romines at some point distributed her spray. The issues in question here are whether that met our policy. We determined it did. It is all in the perception of the officer and whether you was coming at me or turning around to do something else. That's basically where the line is here. She was sprayed, which is not uncommon in a use of force like this. There was some mistakes made as it relates to the medical provider in this situation, which is to decontaminate you once you're sprayed, water to the eyes constantly. That did not occur. There was some things, you know, obviously in debate about what the inmate's attempt was going to be. Was it threatening or was it not? We did not discipline the officer. We don't believe that the officer did, if you will, anything wrong. There has been policy changes that needed to be cleaned up, quite frankly, as it relates to what is passive and what is aggressive types of behavior in a situation like this. And I can assure you that piece has improved dramatically. I think the legal department is a better angle to go to as to we support it. I do support the settlement of the case, mainly because of the risk associated with the fees of the attorneys on the other side if you were found to be at fault. The injuries were not significant at all, and the permanent injuries at all. And therefore, that's why it's taken, I think, this long to get to this point, kind of getting to a reasonable number. I would like the legal department to explain there is a portion of this that would be covered by the medical provider, a company that is contracted, and we believe that was responsible on their part. So Metro is not out the entire amount. There's a third of that will be covered by the medical provider. But the officer has since retired, and we have improved, I think, in some areas as a policy. But to me, it's one of the more difficult cases to come down on one side or the other. But there were risks if you went to court.
You've seen the video?
Yes, sir.
Have you seen any evidence that your officer did anything wrong?
I do not, if you take her position, which is what we have to do, and she didn't violate the policy. But it comes down to when the inmate in this situation was turning around, the officer felt threatened during that moment. This is non-lethal force. Obviously, you're talking about spray. And so that's not uncommon. It's just the other side of this coin is the inmate alleged that she was not in any aggressive way coming toward the officer. There's not anything that shows you either one of those. She makes a turn. There's no obvious assault in nature, but you don't know what's next. I tell people this all the time, that I think it's our job as administration of that organization to clean up the policies. We shouldn't penalize our officers for not having real clear policy in a situation like this, and therefore we do not believe discipline is appropriate. I do believe it's appropriate for us to clean up some of the policy. I told the attorneys the last 4 to 5 years with this case, I wasn't afraid to go to court and stand up there and explain what happened. But I do believe in the best interest of Metro government, it's better to settle it because you are at risk for the fees. These attorney fees get very high very quickly. If the medical provider wasn't in the mix as well, which takes the liability off Metro in that case, I may even not feel as well as standing up here saying it's a good thing to do, but I believe it's the right thing given that contribution by them.
So the policy to which you're referring is specifically the policy with respect to the use of pepper spray?
Yes, sir.
Can you elaborate on what the policy was and what it now is, and educate us on what the changes are?
Yeah, basically what it is the original policy, actually the recommendation coming from the provider of the spray is that you use it in an aggressive way. Our policy allowed you to, it's called a use of force continuum. What level of force can you use at what action of the person? And I don't believe that was very clear, that our officers should only use it when you see an active, aggressive person. It basically allowed you to, after receiving or given a direction, if the inmate doesn't comply and you're trying to maintain order, keep in mind, it's as many people as in this forum here, and you're trying to maintain order in a very new part of the jail, and we think that's high risk. And therefore, it allowed her to use, we believe, some discretion. The difficulty was, I don't believe both the policy and the recommendation from the provider lined up very well consistently, and I think we could be at risk in a courtroom anyway with a very aggressive other side. But I don't feel like it's my job to come up here and say officer did anything wrong. We've reviewed it. We never disciplined her from the very beginning. And as you well know, these lawsuits come up years later sometimes in this case. And so I don't believe it's right to go back and hold her accountable for what we don't believe she violated the policy. We thought it was our role to clean up the policy.
And when you investigated this initially, the decision made not to discipline her had nothing to do with the fact that she's retired. It was something you did based on your investigation at the time this incident occurred. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it was 5 years ago. And so we, you know, I don't like the idea that just because we were sued, it shouldn't change our attitude toward discipline. And so that decision to discipline her occurs usually within 10 days of the event. Lawsuits are a year or so later. So we wouldn't change based on fear of attorneys. If I did that, I'd be changing my policy every day.
Thank you. Just a quick question for Mr. Cooper.
Attorney Cooper.
With respect to the policy, did you have anything to do with that, or you weighed in on it? Are you happy with the new policy with regard to pepper spray?
I would have to defer to the attorney that handled the case regarding the change in policy. We just look at what the policy was at the time of the event. And this, as the sheriff indicated, it's kind of a she said situation, and we're settling it primarily it's a business decision. It's going to cost us more than the amount of settlement to try this case by the time we pay the experts and pay the attorneys for the officer. So even if, since it is a federal court case, use of force case, if the plaintiff was awarded $1 in damages, we would also have to pay all of her attorney fees. So we're already going to pay more than the cost of the settlement to try it. And it's as the sheriff indicated, the medical provider is contributing 1/3 of the settlement amount.
And that's because the medical provider allegedly did not clean the eyes out immediately?
Correct. And then further exacerbated the discomfort by using a dry paper towel or instructing her to use a dry paper towel.
So I understand the business decision component of this. So what I'm hearing from you is it doesn't sound like there's clear evidence that we did anything wrong, we as a Metro Sheriff's Department employee?
That's correct. I don't know that the officer would come across, the now retired officer would come across as a very good witness, but this is just a business decision.
And with this settlement, does that take off the table any future litigation that they may have against us?
Yes, this would be a universal settlement. It would settle the lawsuit against the officer as well as against Metro. There are two lawsuits. There's a federal lawsuit and then there's a state court lawsuit, and this would settle all of those. Okay, thank you very much. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Sheriff. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Resolution is recommended. RS 2018-1378, sponsor Vircher, authorizes the Metro Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Stacey Vance Hall against Metro government in the amount of $13,750. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Resolution is recommended. RS 2018-1379, sponsor Vircher, approves an Edward Bryan Memorial Justice Assistance Grant from the United States Department of Justice to the Metro Nashville Police Department for specialized training and equipment to ensure personnel maintain needed certifications for criminal investigation and crime reduction initiatives. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Resolution is recommended. RS 2018-1380, sponsors Vircher and Withers, approves a grant from the State Department of Labor and Workforce Development to the Nashville Career Advancement Center to establish programs and services to be used for the youth program. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Resolution will be recommended. RS 2018-1381, sponsors Vircher, Elrod, Davis, Anthony Davis, approves a contract between Metro Public Works and Red River Waste Solutions for weekly collection of waste in Districts 7, 8, and 9. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Council Lady Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering if somebody from Public Works could tell us what this covers and how it relates to our zero waste master plan? Annexation.
Sharon Wallstrom with Public Works and Sharon Smith with Public Works is also coming. This is the trash collection for the annexation that was done last year. So this is just for those annexed areas. So we did an RFP for a new contract.
And as it relates to the master plan, Public Works will actually continue to collect curbside recycling as we do in all parts of the USD. So we will be, our crews will be collecting the recyclables in the newly annexed area.
Do you have any further questions, Council Lady?
That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Resolution is recommended. RS 2018-1382 sponsors Virtue Elrod, approves a grant from the Tennessee Department of Transportation to the Metro Nashville Public Works Department to conduct a comprehensive litter awareness and reduction campaign involving various community partners and a roundtable of government agencies. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Council Lady Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Virtue. I wanted to inquire about the various community partners and the roundtable of government agencies. Who would that include, and what's the timeline, and what's the intent there?
Sharon Smith with Public Works. So we're actually really excited to get this grant. Some of you may be aware that every year there's a regular litter grant that goes to the sheriff's office, and Public Works gets a portion of that for litter education. But this year, the Tennessee Department of Transportation is doing a special litter grant, and we are going to be able to utilize $200,000 over 2 fiscal years. What we are trying to do is talk to and create a network of, a broad network of individuals and businesses that can provide input. So we're going to be working with community partners. Part of what we want to do is work with the Codes Department, the Sheriff's Office, the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. They have a investigator who goes out and investigates large illegal dumping sites, and TDEC actually has the ability to, depending on the total amount it costs to clean up a site, to press criminal charges against people. So we're going to be working with them. We're also working with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhoods. And overall, the goal is to, not all, as part of this whole campaign, to look for ways that we can engage members of Metro government and the community to help people understand the impact that litter and illegal dumping has on the community as a whole.
Okay, Ms. Smith, I guess my question comes in that I think most people know that littering is bad. And I feel like we have a lot of places in Nashville where any neighborhood organization, council member could tell you are problem areas, but we just don't have the time or the manpower to get up and pick up that trash. Now, from a partnership perspective, I think we have a challenge around MTA, Public Works, you know, what happens to trash at bus stops. That's something I can see there needs to be some sort of interdepartmental intentionality on fixing. But I guess I'm wondering, is this only, again, to talk more about this and educate more and study more, or is this actually to spend some money and go out there and pick up the trash?
No, this includes money for additional trailers. As you probably know, Public Works has court-ordered community service workers. We go out 6 days a week. We primarily follow up on complaints that we get from the community. So we're going to be purchasing at least 1 additional trailer for those crews. In addition to that, we are going to be purchasing some cameras so that we can help hopefully identify people that are illegal dumping. So once we get the grant and we get the cameras, then we're going to be looking at habitual sites where we're able to put up cameras to see people dumping and also to catch them coming in so we can get the license plate. That's one of the few ways that the criminal investigator at TDEC can actually press charges. We are going to, so it's what we've done is trying to divide it up so that there is community education and outreach, but we're still going to be supporting neighborhood groups and our community service workers to go out and pick up the trash. And as an ongoing effort, we also work with MTA on their Adopt to Stop program. I think a lot of people don't realize that if there's a bus stop near their business, they can adopt it, they get a sign, and Public Works, we provide the bags and gloves, litter grabbers, and we'll even go out and pick up the bag trash after. So we will continue to partner with MTA and with the other metro agencies like Metro Codes that we work with routinely.
I appreciate that. So just proportionally, could you kind of share from an education standpoint to equipment to actual trash pickup, how proportionally you would say that's divided?
Just a rough breakdown is about a little over a third will be spent on collection and activities around that, and the rest of it will be spent on expanding the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee Department of Transportation's Nobody Trashes Tennessee campaign, and trying to get people to take pride in the community. A lot of times we get people, just like today, I had a gentleman call, and he wants to know how we can prevent people from littering. And I think a lot of that prevention comes from getting people to understand and take pride in their front yard, in their neighborhood, and in their community.
I appreciate that. I myself, I know many of our colleagues, we've been out in the ditches ourselves picking up the trash.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as you know, litter begets litter, right?
Absolutely.
When you have those problem areas. So what I think, hope you're hearing from me and my colleagues and the community and neighborhood leadership is that, those across the spectrum efforts are very important. But in those particular problem areas, we need to get on those more quickly and pick them up. So I think, let's encourage the community to dial into Hub and so forth. But just, I would really love seeing resources go more intentionally to just getting that litter up as quickly as possible so that it doesn't become kind of the problem area that just keeps cycling through.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Allen, discussion on litter.
Thank you. I'm into garbage. Sharon, I got another question for you. Council Lady Blaylock has the resolution about trying to reduce single-use plastic bags, which I'm really excited about. And that will have an education component as well. Is it possible any of this education money could be directed toward trying to reduce the use of single-use bags, which often end up being part of the litter problem?
I think what we're going to, probably indirectly, because what we're going to be trying to do is focus on all types of litter. And unfortunately, plastic bags, especially once they get airborne, can be really, they get up in trees. It can be really unsightly. So this is definitely, a part of the overall campaign.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Council Lady Allen. Council Lady Dow.
I just had one question, actually two questions. One is, have we considered using, I know in some cities they've used money to set aside for people reporting people dumping, like if they catch them on picture dumping, then they can get the reward money?
I think that's something we would have to ask Metro Legal about. We've never looked at it. At Public Works, our goal is to just try and get out there and get it picked up.
Attorney Cooper.
Did you want me to repeat it?
Please, Council Lady Dow.
I was just asking about, because we continue to have, issues with dumping, and with the new criminal justice reform, we're not putting people in jail. We don't have the crews that we used to have because everybody gets out of jail now. So, and nobody stays, so there's nobody to pick up a lot of this litter. So we're starting to see it in our communities. And one of the questions I've asked is that I've seen some cities set up like a fund if you catch somebody dumping. I know she mentioned putting up cameras, but we see people catch folks dumping all the time with the tag numbers and all of that. Is there some kind of way, if people catch you, record it, turn it in, that they can be compensated?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not familiar with those programs, but that's certainly something we can look at.
Okay, I'd like for you to look at that. And the other thing is, I'm not a big fan of plastic bags, but I do know that that putting it in the trash can and it falling over, spreading everywhere, it's not working neither. And I just want to make sure, are we going to continue? I know the last cleanup we had, we didn't have any bags. We had kitchen bags. Are we going to have bags going forward to help with the cleanups?
Yeah, it was kind of strange. For some reason, the bag donation that we got was those tiny bags, but I've instructed our staff, those bags are not to be going out to any neighborhood cleanups. They're way too small.
Thank you.
Was that it, Council Lady Dow? I can't see you. Councilman Pulley is blocking my view.
I'm sorry, he and Nancy are blocking your view, but I'm completed with my question.
Okay, thank you so much. Great discussion. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Resolution is recommended. RS 2018-1383 sponsors Vircher, Bettany, and Elrod approves an agreement between the United States Department of the Army and the Metro Department of Water and Sewage Services to provide relocation assistance from the Mill Creek Flood Risk Management Project. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Resolution is recommended. Now that brings us to bills on second reading. Well, BL 2018-1293, sponsor Gilmore amends the Metro Code to impose a privilege tax on the sale of tickets to events at the new Major League Soccer Stadium. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? All in favor? Opposed? Bill is recommended. BL 2018-1313 sponsors Vircher, approves a contract between the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity and Empowerment and the United Way of Metro Nashville to provide one-on-one financial counseling and other financial education activities at no charge to low-income residents. There is a substitute where it's actually correcting the name that the contract is between. So can I get them? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the substitute? Did we vote on the substitute? All in favor on the substitute? Opposed? Now we're on the bill as substituted. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Bill is recommended as substituted. BL 2018-1314 sponsors Coop & Vircher, establishes a Blue Ribbon Commission consistent with the annual operating budget for fiscal year 2019 to identify government inefficiencies. Councilman Cooper at large.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In consultation with the administration, they would like to file a resolution covering the same material. So in response to that, hasn't been filed yet. We haven't completely concluded those that filing, but given that, I move for a one-meeting deferral of 314.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded for a one-meeting deferral. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? It's moved for a one-meeting deferral. BL 2018-1315, sponsor Mendez creates a tax increment financing study and formulating committee. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilman Mendez, were you seeking? I'll hit you anyway.
I'm happy to answer any questions that people have.
Is there any discussion? Just for some committee members, Councilman Mendez, for those who may not have been tracking it, can you explain what this bill does?
Sure. This would set up a study committee to look at tax increment financing. I think all of us would agree that there's questions from the community about whether tax increment financing runs exactly the way it ought to. This would set up a 7-person committee with 2 members being appointed by MDHA, 2 members appointed by the mayor, and 3 appointed by election of the Metro Council. And the committee would spend 6 months making recommendations about ways, if any, that we could improve the way tax increment financing works here in Nashville.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Councilman Cooper.
Just wanted to say I strongly support this. One of the more controversial things in the financial picture here in Metro, and it's an excellent way to shed light and process onto this initiative.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. I'm sure your colleague appreciates the support. Councilman Pulley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you looking into this as well. Just a quick question. This is to study and make recommendations. Does the committee have any authority to enact anything besides making those recommendations?
I defer to the sponsor, Councilman Mendez.
Thank you. I think, as you all know, tax increment financing is driven heavily by what's allowed and not allowed under state law. And so I could imagine that there would be recommendations that there would be of some things that the council could do on its own. There might be some things that would have to require the agreement of both MDHA and the council. And it is possible that there could be things that would require changes in state law. But Davidson County has successfully lobbied for a change on tax increment financing just in the last couple years at the state level. So to me, it's all ideas are good ideas. No such thing as a bad idea here, but different ideas might have different degrees of how much we could do unilaterally.
You're good, Councilman Pulley. Councilwoman Gilmore.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I think this is some great legislation and just wanted to commend Councilmember Mendez.
Thank you, Council Lady. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Bill is recommended. Now we're on bills on third reading. BL 2018-1289, sponsors Sledge and Verture, approves the demolition of certain buildings and structures for the construction of a new Major League Soccer stadium at the Fairgrounds, Nashville, and to pose a privilege tax on the sale of tickets to events at the new Major League Soccer stadium. Is there a motion? Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a substitute I'd like the committee to consider, so I'll move the substitute with a brief explanation, if that's okay.
Councilman Schulman, you move the substitute. It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilman Sledge, can you speak to the substitute?
Absolutely, yes. So the substitute is actually very similar to Councilwoman Gilmore's ticket tax bill, and the reason I brought this is A, because I think she brought up a good point with her legislation, and B, because I think I had heard some concern from members regarding long-term maintenance with the stadium. So if you see the substitute that's in your packet, the underscored portion shows that the ticket tax will increase. It will increase incrementally after, I think, year 8, or after year 7, but starting with year 8. And it gets to a $3 level. In fact, I think it starts moving even before that. It's an increment, it's a phase-in to get to the $3 to then put funding away. The reason that there is a phase-in is because it basically matches up with the agreement that the team has with the league about ticket tax and prices. So what I hope it is, and I'd hope the committee would support, it's trying to address that long-term maintenance issue just like Council Lady Gilmore is. It's just doing a phase-in instead of a straight $3, and that's just to try and keep everybody happy. So with that, I would ask for y'all's support.
Thank you, Councilman Sledge. Do we know how much a ticket will be yet? Do we know that?
I'm going to refer to to Council Jamison about kind of how the ticket tax works as a percentage of the ticket price.
The ticket tax can be no more than 10% of the cost of the ticket. So in the initial years, it would be presumably $17.50 or no more than that. And then a 10%, tenfold factor of each ticket beginning in year 8, it could be $30 or higher.
Thank you, Attorney Jamison. Councilwoman Gilmore.
Thank you, Chair. I had to think about it for a second. Yes, and I appreciate what Councilmember Sledge is doing. I just would ask, why didn't he ask me to be a co-sponsor since he appreciated what I did?
Are you seriously wanting an answer?
I am.
Okay. I was moving us along.
There's two bills on the floor. I want to know.
Wait a minute. There you go, Councilman Sledge.
I would love for Council Lady Gilmore to be a co-sponsor on this. There is no reason, honestly. It was just a matter of trying to get all the bases covered as things were coming back and forth. And we were actually discussing another topic beforehand, and I just forgot to ask her.
Okay, and so that we're clear, the language in Councilwoman Gilmore's bill that we've already voted on and passed is included in the substitute that's currently on the floor that the committee is getting ready to vote on.
It's very similar. I might ask Attorney Jameson to just make the distinction.
Can you qualify very similar?
Well, the difference between Councilman Sledge's ticket tax and Council Lady Gilmore's, that Councilman Sledge's is a graduated. It eventually gets to $3 after year 7. Council Lady Gilmore's would immediately be $3, or if that exceeds 10%, be capped at 10%.
And I'll speak to the only reason that is because I was told that there was a prior agreement between the team and the league that is where they would set the ticket tax / price, if that's the best way to put it. So I'm trying to honor that as well as honor the council's request that we be putting money toward long-term maintenance.
Okay. Vice Chair Schulman. Hit you off.
There you go. Thank you, Madam Chair. So once again, Mr. Jameson, we've got a bill that's on third consideration. We've got a bill coming behind it on second. It sounds like it's very similar to what Councilor Gilmore is proposing in the bill that we've now got in front of us. So the question is, if we pass this tonight, Councilor Gilmore's bill is coming, then she could obviously withdraw her bill, or she could pass her bill. She could try to pass her bill, and that might then, would that change what we did? Okay. So the hope is that we figure out and make sure that everybody's comfortable, we work off the same page. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Always bringing balance. Thank you so much, Vice Chair. Council Lady Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Vercher. I appreciate that the sponsor has heard colleagues' concerns about long-term maintenance for this facility, but I continue to be concerned, I guess, about the math in the ticket pricing. I understand the 10% is mandated by the state, and I also understand that we want this to be a family-friendly, reasonably priced outing for community members. That said, I have not seen the projected math for this as far as what gets into this long-term maintenance count over time. I know we had an optimistic attendance projection and a less optimistic one. And there were those among us that were concerned that, especially in those first years, there might be a gap of sorts to which Metro would be obligated. So I don't know, Attorney Jameson or the sponsor can speak to the difference between, say, Ms. Gilmore's proposed approach and this one here. I guess I come at it from, wanting this to be a reasonable cost, but also making sure community members are mindful of when we make a significant capital investment like this, a stadium of this size, of this high use that will sit out in the sun and rain all day long, 365 days a year, it is going to need the maintenance. And we have never had a facility for which we have priced our tickets appropriately to appropriately maintain it without having to kind of come back. So, I'm concerned that we are setting this correctly at this time. And so, Mr. Jameson, can you speak to the differences in the two approaches as far as what would be garnered with the various projections? And I guess that's my question.
What I will do with your indulgence, my understanding is that Councilman Sledges would increase the total revenues from the ticket tax roughly by $20 million. The delta with respect to Council Lady Gilmore's, I do not know. With your indulgence, between now and 6:30, I will have our esteemed finance manager, Mr. Curl, calculate that difference and have those numbers for you this evening.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I guess then for the sponsor, Mr. Sledge, understanding that there are certain expectations by MLS when entering into these agreements or choosing a particular city, and that, you know, they're wanting probably their ticket price to be low to boost attendance to start, and that we have the constraint of the state in the 10% space. Can you speak to the deliberations as far as setting that ticket price? You know, I appreciate you bringing the substitute, but can you speak to that just a little bit more, please?
Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the request. So I can't speak to the conversations between the team and the league. I don't know what those were about the ticket price or anything like that. The thought process behind this, or the conversations I had, was I like Councilor Gilmore's idea. I just wanted to make sure that it was fitting within all the other conversations, including those I'm not privy to about that. I asked the administration about that. They said, well, let's talk to the team and league to make sure we can get something that fits, and that's what came back. So I apologize. I don't know what the conversation was between the team and the league.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess I will just say that I continue to have concerns that the way these tickets are priced and the constraint of the state will mean that we will not be putting away enough for long-term maintenance. But I do appreciate the substitute in an effort to address that to a certain degree.
Thank you so much, Council Lady Henderson. Attorney Jameson, so if we don't know the price of the ticket, how are we projecting revenues?
So the price of the ticket would be the assumption that $3 kicks in from day one, that the ticket prices would be a minimum of $30. That would be the highest rate differential you'd have between Councilor Gilmore's and Councilman Sledge's. If there are more graduated ticket prices, you could just calculate that 1,000 different ways.
Okay.
I'll be able to tell you.
Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Very quickly, we should not vote to demolish the fairgrounds without any evidence whatsoever that this is a good location at all for the soccer stadium, and to demolish the most used public land, the facilities there in Nashville, is a permanent wrong, and don't be accessories to this. I think there are two rules to keep in mind. First, do no harm, and we're clearly harming a critical part of the Nashville community in this. And secondly, show your work. Show your work as to why this is a good location.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. Council Lady Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have we voted on this first amendment? Because I have another amendment I would like to offer if that is appropriate.
We have not. We're
Okay.
still on the substitute.
Okay, I'm going to wait on that then.
Okay, seeing no further discussion on the substitute, all in favor? Opposed?
That's just the substitute.
Okay, it's what? I'm sorry.
That's just the substitute.
Yeah, we're just on the substitute. Now who had amendments?
Now Councilor Allen has an amendment.
Berkeley, you had an amendment? Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. So in response to Councilman Cooper's concerns, which I think we do need to take this demolition very seriously, there is a charter amendment that says, you know, that we will not destroy any of the uses. I would like to offer an amendment, which is in the packet, that would simply very explicitly move into the body of the bill that the demolition does not occur until new buildings are built. That's not the exact wording, but that's the intent. That's already in the resolutions of this bill. We talked about this, I think, on first reading. Councilmember Mendez asked this question, but we never actually made the amendment to do that. So I don't know that I will move it on the floor, but I would like to at least have this body discuss that amendment and vote on it. And then if through the council discussion on the floor it becomes important to people to do that, I would like to offer that.
Okay, thank you, Council Lady Allen. I'm going to go to the sponsor, then we're going to come back to your amendment. Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a friendly amendment. I fully support this amendment. It's a good amendment in the sense that it assures the public and everyone involved that that we will keep everything running at the fairgrounds as it is while the new facilities are constructed for the Flea Market and Expo. I spoke with Director Laura Womack as well about what facilities, if any, would be demoed while the new structures were being built. The only things that were slated were the place where we keep our election machines in a building that is wholly inadequate. Those will be moving to a more secure facility. And then that Shed 5 is what I was told, which is a extremely low rate of rent and doesn't impact the flea market or expo events. Those are the ones who are being discussed. I think this is a good amendment, would ask for the committee's support.
Thank you, Councilman Sledge. Did you have anything else, Council Lady Allen? Okay, seeing no further discussion, now we're on the amendment. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, amendment is recommended. Now we need to vote on the bill as substituted and amended. I wanted to make sure we got that right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're going to need show of hands. All in favor is the bill substituted as amended.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Opposed?
2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 against. 8 to 4.
8 to 4, bill will be recommended. Recommended as approved, substituted as amended. Now we're on BL 2018-1291 as amended. Sponsor Sledge, Vercher, and Betnay declares property surplus and approves the execution and delivery of a ground lease between the Metro Board of Fair Commissioners and Nashville Soccer Holdings Development, LLC, for the construction of a development at the Fairgrounds, Nashville. And I believe we have an amendment on that. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilman Sledge, Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was going to explain the what will be a late filed amendment. I want to be very explicit about that. The late filed amendment that's before you will be before us for consideration is putting the legal description of basically the area that was proposed. I believe this had been administratively attached at the last meeting, but there was a question as to whether that was appropriate or whether we need to do more. So this late filed amendment is being offered. It is the description of those boundaries. So that's what we're considering. Thank you.
Councilman Sledge, is this from the language as it relates from the community benefits agreement?
No. This is anything with the CBA. This is just the, and I'm probably saying it wrong. What's the terminology, Attorney Jameson?
I've heard meets and bounds and mets and bounds, but
yes, of the property that's being surplused. So at least.
Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you, Chair. So if he could just read the description, because it's late filed, if he doesn't mind, just read, I guess, up at the top, so we're all on the same page. Someone?
Councilor Gilmore, I don't know if you really want me to.
let me read.
Mr.
Just a little bit.
Jameson, because it's lengthy. Mr.
I'll
Jameson.
read a few lines too.
Okay, just a few lines. I think it's appropriate because it's late filed and there's a lot going on today. We want to make sure that we catch it all.
So this is just the legal description for the 3 blocks of the property. Here's mixed-use Block A. A few lines. Being a tract of land lying in Davidson County, Tennessee, also known as mixed-use Block A of the Nashville Fairgrounds, and being more particularly described as follows. Commencing at an existing concrete monument at the intersection of the southerly right-of-way lane and easterly terminus of Benton Avenue at a corner common with Amy and Mark Wigger, as of record in deed instrument number, and then a 12-line or 12 numeral digit at the registrar's office. And it carries on like that for a page, two and a half pages.
And committee members, it is in your late file
All
packet.
right, thank you.
Seeing no further discussion,
So we're on the late file amendment.
we're on the late filed amendment. Just make sure, Mr. Jameson corrected me. Just make sure that we're all clear. You ready for the vote?
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Amendment is recommended. Now we got to vote on the bill as amended.
Yeah, you don't have, Councilman Freeman had an amendment, but he's not here to offer it, so.
He's not here to offer it.
So you're ready to vote on it as approved.
Okay, so now we're ready to vote on it as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Bill is recommended as amended. And with that said, we are adjourned.